Good evening, everybody. It's great to see everybody on the call tonight. My name is TJ Halliday. I'm the coordinator of officials for the state of Maine. This is the second installment of our Maine Speaker series for the 2023 season. It's a great honor to introduce our next guest. He's an unbelievable official in the state of Connecticut. And I think this topic is perfect for him because if you ever seen him officiate, he really does pay attention to details. He's a state championship caliber official from the state of Connecticut, does a wonderful job. He's the state interpreter of Connecticut, and it's a great pleasure to introduce Mr. Charley Harbach.
Oh, thank you for those kind words, TJ. Then we'll just get right into our agenda for tonight. We're going to talk about sweating the small stuff. And this is stuff that you do before game day. And then we're going to talk about doing stuff with pride, stuff that you do on game day with a little bit of sweat mixed in. So bear with me as I give you a little bit of context of where I came up with the sweat the small stuff and have some pride. Years ago, I had the privilege of attending a student leadership forum, and the keynote speaker talked about having pride. His definition of pride was personal responsibility in developing excellence. Now, that acronym really stuck with me. I know that we all have a lot of pride. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here tonight. When I passed my test 41 years ago, I couldn't wait to get started. After getting some game experience, I hit a brick wall, and I mean, I hit it hard. I found out that officiating was way harder than I ever thought it would be. I was at a crossroad. I could quit, or I could double down on my competitive nature. And I think we all know what I chose. My competitive nature drove me to try and be the best official that I could become. So how was I going to accomplish all this? It wasn't easy. Took me a lot of hard work, many hours in the rule book, many discussions with veteran officials, many camps, schools, and getting as many games as I could get assigned to in summer leagues, AAU, and regular seasons. And somewhere along the way, somebody told me to pay attention to detail, and that's where I get sweat the small stuff. And that sweat the small stuff comes from a series of books called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. But I take that a little differently, where I sweat the small stuff when it comes to officiating. Here's how and why. You need to set goals, whether it's mastering the rule book. That was one of my early goals, was mastering the rule book. I spent a summer writing questions about the rules. And by the time I was done with that, I don't have a photographic memory, but I had the rules down pretty well. Whether it's mastering mechanics, that was another one of my early goals. Some of my other early goals were getting to varsity, getting some league playoff games, getting into the state tournament, getting league championship games, getting state championship games. So that's another goal. But the key is setting goals for yourself. You have to do that short term, mastering the rule book. Short term, mastering the signals. Short term, working on getting the varsity. Medium range, so on and so forth, until you get your way up to working that championship game that you're looking for. You need to master that rule book. And as I said, I went through a summer writing questions to the rules, similar to what we see on our IBO exams. There's no better confidence builder than knowing you're applying rules correctly to tough plays. After I got through that summer and went out on the court afterwards, I felt so much more confident than I was before I spent that summer trying to master the rule book. Mastering the correct signals and using them properly. You look like you're in control when your signals are crisp and proper, even when your head's exploding. You made a bad call, coach is on you, so on and so forth. The way I was able to get my signals crisp was, of course, I did this when nobody was home, but I got my whistle out, got in front of the mirror, started running plays through my head where I had to call a foul or I had to call a violation, and I blew my whistle and I made the signals, and my signals got more crisp, and I figured out how to use the signals properly for the different fouls that were being committed. Can't stress that enough. After you get through mastering the rule book and get into the Crew of Two manual, can't stress that enough. Going through that great tool, there's great graphics in there. You got to use it a lot. It helps you to know where you're supposed to be in relation to your partner, in relation to the players out there on the court, and in relation to where the ball is located. Knowing what you're supposed to be looking at greatly increases your chances of making correct rulings. Know your PCA. Blue's the trail, green's the lead. And, you know, with the way teams are playing these motion offenses, and they're not putting players down on the block in the post, it tends to lead to ball watching. So in order to not do that, you need to continually scan your PCA for competitive matchups. And if you continue to do that, you won't be a ball watcher. And if there's really nothing going on in your PCA, you can stretch it out into your secondary coverage area, and you can help your partner. As long as you're not being a ball watcher. One of my pet peeves. Master mechanics and positioning. This allows you to be in the position at the right time to make quality rulings or calls, plus your partner knows where you are at all time. And looking at that picture right there, that official's in a great position to have an open look at that play. So you need to make sure you're not getting straight lined and you have open looks just like that official has, as much as possible. And if you are looking at straight line, you need to move so that you can see in between the players. Really important that you always work for open looks. So work, 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 and then work some more. Sweating the small stuff will help you achieve your goals and get you where you want to be. So now, a little bit about the pride. Now that you've mastered sweating the small stuff, you can reach your goals with pride. In my book, that P stands for pay attention to details. Check Arbiter often for assignments of possible game changes. Set up your email and your cell phone to receive notifications for new games and game changes. I'm a fan of Arbiter Mobile. I use that a lot. Got my phone set up to get text messages from my assigner for new games or any game changes. And then I can go to the Arbiter Mobile real easy and accept those game changes or accept those new games. It's really easy to use and it's free. Confirm assignments or change an assignment on Arbiter in a timely fashion. Don't let your assigner out there hanging. As soon as you find out that you have a game change or you got a new assignment, get in there and confirm it. The faster you do that stuff and the more often you do it on a quick basis, your assigner's probably going to give you more games when they're in a bind. So keep your availability updated. That keeps your assigner happy. When planning your travel to a site, you need to give yourself extra time, making sure that considering the possibility of delays. I don't know how many times that I've been on my way to a game and have run into some construction or unfortunately an accident, and that delayed me getting to the game site. So if you have to go through major cities or along major highways, might be a good idea to check the Department of Transportation website for where construction might be or where there might be accident delays. And I know that nowadays you might be able to get that kind of stuff on on your cell phone, using some type of travel GPS, but sometimes they don't show up fast enough. So, just do what's best for you to make sure that you are able to get to the game site on time. Okay. And if you do get delayed, call your partner and the site director or AD as soon as possible. Contact your partners about assignments or game changes. I'm in the habit of, as soon as I get that and as soon as I find out who my partner is, I usually send them a text message and see if we can hook up to ride together. And if I know that we can't, then I let them know what time I'm going to be at the game site. So, as I said, attempt to ride with them whenever possible. And when you can, there are huge benefits to traveling with your partners, like a super pregame. Many times I've gotten in the car and had to travel 45 or 50 minutes with my partner, and we've had amazing pre-games when we're riding to the game that way. The R for me stands for requiring excellence. So you require excellence of yourself by having a thorough pregame, even if you've worked with your partner or partner several times during the season or in the past, especially and if or when you're assigned to crew of 3 games. Use that IBO pregame card. It's a fabulous tool. It covers just about everything that you can think of that might happen in a game. So make sure you're using the IBO pregame card. Review the Crew of 3 manual and the IBO Officials Handbook, which is the 3rd section of the manual, if you get assigned to a Crew of 3 game. Make sure to review that thoroughly. Use proper high school floor mechanics and signals when you're working a high school game. I know for a fact that any person that's working on the college level isn't going to go out onto a college court using the high school floor mechanics and signals. So vice versa, don't use college mechanics in a high school game. At halftime, talk about possible adjustments that might be made by either team to start the second half. Like thinking if they're going to come out to press or anything like that. What type of press they might do, any type of changes, changing from man to zone, or from zone to man, or to trapping, whatever the case may be. Talk about that stuff at halftime. And then when you get back out on court, focus on those first 3 minutes of the second half to be ready for any of those sudden team adjustments and to stay on top of the game. Now, I'm not saying that we haven't been concentrating the whole game, but just up that antenna a little bit higher for those first 3 minutes so you keep the game in your control and it doesn't start to get out of your control. The I stands for information. Information is very important for us, but don't discuss your assignments or any of your games on social media. Nothing good comes of that. I've seen people do it and lose games. So just don't discuss any of your assignments or any of your games on social media. Know the teams that are playing. Sometimes I like to go and figure out, I can go in Connecticut, I can go to the CIEC website and I can find out what teams' records are. And I'll look to see if they have any common opponents, see what the outcome of those games were. And that helps to start planning for what's going to happen in the game. Know the coaches too. If you know the coaches and you know what they're like, put that into your information network. Arrive at least 1 hour, if possible, before game time at the game site. That way you can relax a little bit before the game's supposed to start. And it also gives you time to have a great pregame. Talk to the site manager to remind him or her about the POE regarding controlling fan behavior, because it's really their job, not ours, to take care of that. One thing I didn't put in here, try and find a trainer to talk to them so you know where they're going to be in case you personally need something or something happens in the game when you know if, let's say, a player hits their head and you send them out, you know that if the trainer says it's okay for them to come back in, at least they've been looked at by an appropriate healthcare person. Find out who is responsible for letting you into the dressing room at halftime and after the game. Try and get them to be there when you get there, and then have a great post game discussing what went really well for us and what we can do to get better. Some of the things that we didn't do so well and how we can attack getting better at that. Leave the site with your partners, making sure that both or all of you get to your car safely. I've seen some and heard of some instances where a partner went to the car by themselves and they were having a hard time with the coach that night, and the coach kind of followed them to the car. So don't leave alone, leave with your partner. There's safety in numbers. The D stands for don't be ordinary. Help yourself stick out. Sweat the small stuff, such as knowing the APRO status all the time, knowing who got fouled so that they're not sending some other shooter to the line, knowing the new bonus situation to prevent correctable errors, where we're now shooting on the 5th foul in each quarter. And I don't know about any of you, but I pretty much like that rule. Not even used it yet. I pretty much like it a lot, I think. Knowing how much time's remaining near the end of every quarter so that you're prepared when it gets down to that last second where you know whether that ball's released in time or not. Knowing each team's timeout status, that what they have left. You know, I like to ask the timer when a timeout's, or not the timer, excuse me. I like to ask the scorer if they have any 30-second timeouts left. Because once I find that out, I don't have to ask them what they want anymore, because I know they're done with their 30-second timeouts. And I know that all that they have left are 60-second timeouts. And that's helpful. I can just put my hands out and call 60-second timeout and don't go in there. So anticipate timeout situations. What I mean by that, let's say a team's up by 15 or 20, and next thing you know, it's down to 10, down to 8. Anticipate a coach thinking about a timeout in that situation, or maybe even earlier than that. But anticipate those types of timeout situations coming down to the end of the game. Anticipate that a coach might want to call a timeout after the ball goes through the basket. Anticipate those type of timeout situations so you're not caught off guard, and then the coach doesn't go ballistic because you didn't hear or see him or her call that timeout. Knowing what to do if an intentional or technical foul is ruled. So lots of times when those types of things happen, an intentional foul or a technical foul, our minds start to go a little bit haywire, because our emotions are up a little bit and our adrenaline's flowing pretty high. And we want to make sure that we know what to do when that occurs. And most of the time, if you're the person who didn't call a technical foul, make sure that we do all the right stuff, go to the right basket, and those types of things. Occasionally, there's some unusual incidents that occur at games that require the attention of your interpreter. Don't let an AD or a coach get to your interpreter first about unusual incidents at games. Often it's us who possess the pertinent and accurate facts that are required. A coach or an AD, they have interest in one side of the game. And they're going to present their bias to your interpreter, or their bias to your interpreter, if you let them get there first. So when these unusual incidents occur, soon as the game's over, get on the phone to talk to your interpreter. If your interpreter doesn't answer, leave a message. You can even try and text them as well. For this reason, report all unusual incidents to your interpreter immediately after the game in question. Incidents to report should be serious in nature and involve player and coach disqualifications. We were talking a little bit about that earlier tonight, and here in Connecticut, a player has to sit out for one game at the level that they were disqualified from, and a coach has to sit out for 2. So we need to make sure that we have the right player when we have to report this disqualification. So another situation is a serious challenge to a rule interpretation that may have had a direct impact on the final score of the game, that your interpreter will likely hear about from coaches and or ADs. An example that comes to mind, a few years back, there was 0.3 on the clock, and a team was down by 3, and they passed the ball into a player who was outside the 3-point arc, caught the ball, was fouled, and the officials gave them 3 shots. So that's something that has a direct impact on the final score. And your interpreter is definitely going to hear about that from coaches and or ADs. If there's serious injuries, let your interpreter know. If there's disruptive spectator behavior, let your interpreter know. If there's unacceptable behavior by either school, let your interpreter know. And in these situations, the disruptive spectator behavior, unacceptable behavior by either school, they can contact the appropriate personnel at the school to let them know what was going on. Remember, 2 technical fouls means disqualification and an ejection report, even if the second technical foul is a player's 5th foul. Study chapter 11, segment 14, pages 105 to 109 in the manual regarding fighting, so that you can assess all the proper penalties, properly. Whether it's players coming on the court and participating off the bench, or coming off the bench and not participating, and how many technical fouls. All of those types of situations warrant. What do you do when there's more from one team than the other? Make sure you study chapter 11, segment 14, so that you can adjudicate those penalties properly. But let's knock on wood and hope that they don't happen. We need to have the correct player, as I said before. We need to have the correct coach's name for that disqualification report, and just don't guess. Get the player's number at some or the player's name at some break in the action, so that when you have to write that disqualification report, you have the correct people. And I always like to talk about when you do have to do one of those disqualification reports, stick to the facts. No opinions, just the facts. The player said this, this, and this to me, so I gave him a T. Not the player was hounding me all game, I got tired of it, so I gave him a T. Just the facts. What the player did that caused you to give them a technical foul. Same thing with a coach. What they did that caused you to give a technical foul. No opinions there, just facts. Okay. Once we leave the site, here in Connecticut, they have a policy where if we eject somebody, the AD can come to talk to us after the game. If they do it in a reasonable manner, to see if, and this isn't happening in my book, but to see if we want to change our mind after thinking about it for a while. But pretty sure up in Maine it's not that way. So once you leave the court, once you leave the visual confines of the court, then all decisions by the game officials are final. E, that stands for enjoy the experience. This season may be one of the best experiences of your lifetime. Have fun. You don't know if any extenuating circumstances could change your opportunities to officiate. I've been rather lucky in my 41 years that I've never had any serious injuries that kept me out during the season. I've had a knee injury that kept me out of the golf season, but that didn't really bother me as much as it would have if I would have had to miss refereeing basketball games. Look, dress, and act professional. It helps the experience. It really does. If a coach has never saw you before and you walk out onto the court and your pants aren't pressed and your shirt's all wrinkled and everything, or it's kind of hanging out in the back, they're not going to think you're going to do a good job. And You could be an NBA caliber official. They're still not going to think you do a good job if you don't look, dress, and act professional. So give yourself a little leg up by looking great when you go out there. And don't call anything you can't explain. This comes from Henry Nichols. I don't know if you all know him. He was an NBA, a college Division I official, and I think he did 7 Division I national championship games. And I went to a camp that called Nationwide Camp back in 1985, run by him, Don Shea, and Charley Bloodworth. And Don Shea used to talk about how detailed Hank Nichols' pregames were. And those words right there were his pregame, according to Don Shea. They would get dressed and he would say, don't call anything you can't explain, and let's go have some fun. So I just kind of thought that was funny. Oops, what's that? So these are some reminders that I give at the end of all my interpretation presentations with my board at our meetings. So always have a good pregame. Trust your partner. Work your PCA. And when you trust your partner and you work your PCA, you're not a ball watcher. Look, again, like I said before, look for those competitive matchups in your PCA when the ball's not there. It's in somebody else's PCA. Look for competitive matchups. That will help you not to be a ball watcher. And you all know Peter Webb. He's the one who told me this, and this really stuck with me. That's why I remind people about it all the time. Work every game you're assigned like it's a championship game. It means something to somebody, even if it's a 5th and 6th grade game. It means something to those players. So work every game you're assigned like it's a championship game. You never know who's watching you or who's posting to Facebook, YouTube, Snapchat, or Twitter. You don't want to be one of those people out there on those social media or even on YouTube showing some egregious foul that in a game that you're working and there's no whistle. So work every game like it's a championship game, and you can attain your goals that way. So keep your pride, best of luck, and have yourself a great season.
Thank you, Charlie. That was great. I appreciate your time. We have a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
You talked a little bit about injury situations, and you talked about how to handle them as far as reporting them and stuff like that. How do you know when to stop play for an injury?
In my mind, you can stop it right away. If a player's down in the middle of the lane and people are trying to tap rebounds, you got to stop that right then and there, because that player could get landed on by somebody coming down after a tap. If it doesn't seem to be that bad, I always ask the player, do you need your coach? Give them that real quick. And if they don't, then I wait until the opposing team, if the opposing team has the ball, I wait until they stop attacking the basket, and then I blow my whistle. But you don't have to wait that long if you don't want to. If you think it's severe enough, blow your whistle right away.
Okay.
You can't go wrong doing that.
Okay. Same thing with disruptive behaviors during the game. You talked about how to report to your interpreter, but if the officials encounter disruptive behavior, how are the officials going to handle that at that time?
As I said, find out who the site director is or who the AD is. Sometimes the AD is not at every game. That's not the way it is. I mean, at my high school, the AD is not at every game. He has some some people who are the site manager in his place. So you need to find out who that is. And if there's disruptive fan behavior, you need to go talk to that site director or AD and let them know who that person is, what they're doing, and either tell them to remove them or tell them to take care of it, whatever you deem appropriate. But as our friend Alan Goldberger says, don't get involved with fans. Just don't do it. Nothing good comes from that. You might end up saying something that you are going to regret when you get involved with fans. So just don't do it. Go see the site director or the AD and let them take care of it.
Very good. Now, you talked a little bit about post-game conference. Let me ask you a question here. How do you handle a post-game conference in situations where things might not have gone as well as you wanted them to?
I always start, even I know that's going to be in the front of our minds, but I always start with the stuff we did well. And so that we're in an upbeat type of mindset, and then start talking about that situation that didn't go well. And if I have to, I'll open up the rule book or I'll open up the manual to see if we handled it correctly according to that. And I suggest that to people. If you're not sure, when you get in the locker room, look it up right then and there, so that you have an idea, and then you can talk it through with your partner or partners and get it straightened out that night. And then you stick it in the back of your head and you just vow to not let that happen again.
That's good. My last question for you. How do you, if you had some young officials, new officials, how do you get, what would you recommend for officials trying to master the rule book and the manual?
I only know what worked for me, and that was sitting down and writing rules questions. And I suggest that to people. If that's not for them, I've also suggested, which is, this is why I love the IBO manual. The like casebook and the rule book are like right there. They're enmeshed right together. When we didn't have that, and we had the rule book and the casebook, I would tell people, look up the rule and open up the casebook and look at them together. Look at that specific rule, look at that specific casebook play that applies to the rule, and that should help as well.
Very good, very good. Well, we appreciate your time tonight, Charlie. This is an outstanding video for us. It's going to be a great addition to our library. We had 40 plus people on the call tonight, and we'll put this on our website and we'll get this exposed to the rest of our members in Maine. Can't thank you enough.
I appreciate the opportunity, and I really enjoyed it, the whole process.
Also want to thank Julie Goupel for all the works that she put in. Julie Bradstreet put a little work in as far as putting the format together. It came out really nice for us. Thank you, everybody. We really appreciate your time.